of the things that you should put into place when doing a program like this, especially as often as this one comes at you, is that only X% of the shows can be about how awesome Sidney Crosby is on and off the ice. You know, good morning to you. Good Monday morning. I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports. This is Daily Shot of Penguins. It comes your way bright and early every weekday. If you're into football and or baseball, I also offer daily shots of Steelers and Pirates in the same place that you found this. Penguins 5, Senators 2 in Sudbury, Ontario, where the NHL was conducting another one of its Craft Hockeyville exhibitions aimed at raising money to fortify community rinks. And the turnout there and the enthusiasm there, by every accounting, including from our own Taylor Haas of DK Pittsburgh Sports, we were the only outlet that traveled up there to cover this, was somehow even more heartening than Sid scoring twice and Evgeny Malkin scoring the other 3. Sid could be seen outside the rink signing autographs, meeting with children, mostly children, some of them children with special needs, children in 87 t-shirts and sweaters, children chanting his name before he even got into the building. And then Sid does what he does because, of course, he does, because he has to score. This was Sid after the game when it was pointed out to him by a Canadian reporter that a lot of those children weren't even born when he scored the golden goal for Canada in the Vancouver Olympics in 2010.
Yeah, I mean, it means a lot. Obviously, I've played for a long time. That's a nice way of putting it. And I think, to be still playing and to get that kind of support, I think it means a lot. And, I think you look at different experiences over the years, and I don't think that stuff ever gets old when you're in positions like this, and it's a preseason game and you haven't played in 5 months. I think it's definitely motivating when you have a turnout like we did, and you see how excited people are to see NHL game up close. So I think that's something that sticks with you, and it was a great welcome, like you said, and we appreciate the hospitality. It's a great hockey community, and hopefully we put on a good show for them here.
I've always found the relationship that Sid has with his home country, and then before that, the one that Mario Lemieux had with his home country, both of which came with different challenges. In Mario's case, English-speaking Canada was all about Wayne Gretzky, and only the Quebecers thought that Mario was the greatest. And of course, the Quebecers were right. And in Sid's case, the disparity came mostly because he has spent his entire NHL career, and really now more than half of his life, in Pittsburgh. So the closest he can come to attaining, I guess, his hockey Canadianness, if you will, is by leading his country to gold in pretty much every single tournament in which he's played. Now, unfortunately, because of Gary Bettman, he's only had the opportunity to do that twice, in the aforementioned Vancouver games and, of course, in Sochi, Russia in 2014. This episode is brought to you by Bet Online, your number one source for all your summer sports needs this season, from Major League Baseball, golf, NHL, NBA playoffs. Get the latest odds and lines, including all team matchups, player props, odds on just about everything that's out there. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to get in on the action. Bet Online, where the game starts. One thing I vividly recall, but especially in Vancouver because it was on technical home ice, is that the Canadian people seemed to embrace however many minutes he was theirs before he had to go back to being ours. So even over the weekend in Sudbury, he's up there answering tons and tons of questions about Sudbury, about Canada, about being Canadian, and about what it's like to be Canadian. And there was a lot of this at the Olympics, too. And I'm going to repeat that I found a lot of it to be funny. Like, you don't need to hear this from him, do you? I mean, what has he ever done to make you suggest he's not Canadian or that someday he won't be Canadian? I can safely say with a gentle prod to my friends north of the border that there's some insecurity there. This is a lot of what happened in Winnipeg with Rutger McGroarty, with everybody freaking out. How can you do this? How can you do this? And one of the few things that unites fans of the 7 different Canadian NHL franchises is when any one of them loses somebody to an American market. And sure enough, the uproar about McGroarty made it all the way across. But Sid, man, don't worry about Sid. Look, I fully believe Sid's going to spend the rest of his life in Pittsburgh. I also fully believe he's going to maintain the passport he's currently got. When we come back, J1Q. J1Q comes from Laura, who asks, "Hi DK, hope you are well." I hope you're well as well, Laura. I hope you're well as well. So, Laura asks, "I have a question that continues to pop into my head regarding the plethora of players still in training camp and the number of spots that might be available on the opening night roster. How many of these guys can the Penguins not send to Wilkes-Barre Scranton because they have NHL-only contracts? Thanks for years of the best Pens coverage around. I appreciate that." I'm not going to give you the best answer around because I'm not going to be able to get super technical with who has this, who has that type of deal. I do know that there's a fixed number of NHL contracts in total that you're allowed to have. I do know that the Penguins are below that limit. And I do know that there are players who, regardless of whether it's this, that actually what you brought up, the NHL only thing doesn't have anything to do with this. If they go to the AHL, they first have to clear waivers. And I think if you were to look at this training camp roster, which, by the way, since you referenced this, Laura, the reason that there's so many players still in there in the fold is because they keep playing these games, and now they had this Detroit one messed up. I drove all the way to Detroit to cover the game against the Red Wings Saturday night. I'm sitting there in an empty arena because the Penguins didn't make it. They're making that one up tonight at Little Caesars Arena. But that'll also mean that they play 1, 2, 3 games in as many nights because they're playing the Red Wings again tomorrow night at PPG Paints Arena. So you want to keep those players around so you're not wearing out your main guys. But I'm going to pick somebody here just as a random name. Let's say Anthony Beauvillier doesn't make the Penguins. Let's say, even though they've given him all kinds of opportunity, first line and all that other stuff. Again, I'm not predicting that he won't. I'm just saying, here's a name. He's got X amount of time in the NHL. He'd have to clear waivers. If someone else picks him up, then you lose any and all responsibility. Obviously, he's just out of your organization. If someone doesn't and he makes it through and he goes to Wilkes-Barre, here too, he's just a dude. Now, depending on the way his contract is structured, how much he gets paid in the AHL might be more than what other guys down there are getting and stuff like that. Bottom line is here, Laura, I haven't really worried about who would be cut from a camp like this. I think this is the type of scenario that you want in a camp, and you don't worry about the spillover. If you were to have had, out of the 14 players competing for 5 spots around Lars Eller on the bottom 6, if you were to have had, let's say, 12 of those 14 just completely kill it, just have dominant camps, can't let them go, I mean, that'd be a blessing and a half. Because you would have really had, one heck of a camp, one heck of a preseason. As it is, I don't know that really happened or is happening. And I definitely don't think it's the case with the type of players, the category of players that you're describing. I told you this was not going to be a great answer, but it's mostly because I don't really think it'll be a thing. I think the team is going to end up it's going to be who you thought it would be, other than maybe a couple guys sneaking in because of injuries. Like, for example, Blake Lizotte got hit in the face with a puck last night in Sudbury. So you have no idea what will happen to these guys. But I'm not seeing anything where you go, whoa, that guy made it? Or for that matter, that guy didn't make it? We're going to do another one of these tomorrow. Thanks so much for the question, Laura. Thanks to everybody for listening.